Hey everyone, welcome back to Strange Minds 6. I'm your host Ruby, and today we are going to be getting back into Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by New York Times best-selling author Shea Earnshaw. And today we're actually going to be reading chapter 16. We might read a little bit more, maybe 16 and 17, but I don't want to promise anything. Just letting you guys know. And yeah, definitely hit that like button. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. You know, the more friends, the merrier. So please grab your snacks, grab your drinks, sit back, relax, and let's get to it, shall we? Also, comment below who is your favorite character in The Nightmare Before Christmas, Long Live the Pumpkin Queen. Is it Jack? Is it Zero? Is it Sally? Who? Leave your comments and opinions down below. But without further ado, let's get into chapter 16. In Jack's dazzling, wondrous stories of the human world, he often described cities that stretched as far as the eye can see. Towering buildings, buses and trains crammed with people traveling from one city to the next, from one country to another, a place thrumming and noisy and endless. It always sounded terrifying to me, a place to easily get lost in, possibly forever. But when I step through the doorway, it doesn't seem large at all, just a library. Rather ordinary in size, even small, compared to the library in Lullaby. Library. Velvet couches are arranged in perfect formation beside a fireplace, and a few upholstered chairs sit beside a bank of windows, and the fabric, a tightly woven silk depicting a scene of meadow flowers with a handsome manor house in the distance. It's well-made fabric. I would kill to have for my own flesh. Bookshelves tower above me, with most reaching so far upward that there seems to be no way to retrieve them. Old tomes, no longer read, no longer pulled from the shelf. I walk to the wall of windows and peer out at a green expanse of manicured lawn shimmering beneath the sunlight, with flowering trees in pale white and soft buttery pink. I have no idea where I am, but from what I can see, the stone building where I stand appears to be stretched outward on both sides, massive and sprawling into the garden and beyond. It feels like something I've seen in a storybook. It feels like a castle. I start to turn away from the window to head for the nearest door when I hear someone breathing low and soft. I'm not alone. I scan the room and notice the back of a head resting against one of the upholstered couches facing away from me. Someone is seated in the room, quiet, except for her breathing. Tentatively, I move toward her, unsure how she will react to see a rag doll in her library, ready to run to bolt toward the doorway on the far side of the library. If this was Halloween night, my appearance would be suitable for drawing out screams. But on this average evening, a rag doll is not something that should be seen in the human world. As I get closer, I notice that she's more slumped than sitting. Shoulders dropped, cheekbones slackened. What I see next makes my stomach drop with a painful jolt. My head starts to swim. A fine layer of white sand covers her short gray hair, still pinned and curled perfectly in place, and sand is scattered at her feet and dusting her pressed and tailored clothes. She's asleep, just like all the others, just like the holiday realms. The Sandman has already been here, to the human world, and my body wants to give out, sink to the floor and press my forehead to the cold wood. Everyone is asleep. The small flicker of hope I felt vanishes, blown out like a candle. How long ago was he here? And is he still in the human world? A place so vast I can't imagine finding him? I inch closer to the woman, feeling drawn toward her. Cold. She looks rather serene for someone who's fallen asleep in such a sudden, baleful slumber. Around her neck rests a delicate row of pearls, in her ears a matching pair of earrings. She is polished, courtly, a woman who surely doesn't comb her own hair or place her own shoes on her feet, a woman who is tender to. I know I should leave, find the closest cemetery, and slip back into Halloween Town. I need to get back, make the potion, and then somehow find the Sandman. But I feel captivated by this woman, intrigued by her neatly arranged dress, and this seemingly private room where she sits. I walk to a desk near a window, touching the small stack of books. Poetry volumes, ancient literature, books on government and royal standards. I turn in a circle and my eyes settle on a painting over the fireplace. I move closer, tiptoeing, even though there is surely no one awake who might hear me and come to investigate my intrusion. The painting, I realize, is a portrait of the same woman who is asleep on the couch. She's a few years younger in the image, her speckled gray hair curled around her ears, and she's wearing a long white and gold dress with a sash and several odd things pinned to it, squares of paper and silver tokens. And on her head sits a crown, silver and ornate and shimmering. At the bottom of the gilded frame is a bronze plaque with the words, Queen Elizabeth II. I glance down, back at the woman, and then around the library. Before I left Dreamtown, my father said I needed to think of the name of a town where I passed through the doorway. When I passed through the doorway, but the only word that kept repeating in my mind, the word I still can't seem to shake, was Queen. And now it seems I have arrived in the library of a queen. While the queen herself sleeps only a foot away, I walk to her and settle carefully onto the cushion beside her. I feel cautiously drawn to her, the elegant tilt of her chin, even while she sleeps. and the graceful, delicate folds of her hands in her lap, a wedding ring on her left hand. Time stretches out around me, the urgency with which I entered her library briefly dulled. I peer up at the painting again, and although she doesn't appear quite as fussed over in real life as she does in the portrait, there is still something about her, a magnificence that cannot be measured in the weight of the silk that makes up her gowns, or the jewels draped over her pale human skin. She has the soul of a queen, sleeping or not, adorned and bejeweled or not. It's in the breath that rests in her delicate lungs, the refined features of her face, the firmness in her jaw. She is dignified and stately and noble. I suppose some people are just born with it in their veins, but I wasn't. My queenly title came after, burdened and heavy and unnatural, yet my gaze keeps flickering from the painting and back at her, trying to see something. In between part of her, that hidden true part. If only she was awake, I could ask her what it feels like to be a queen in the human world. She feels suffocated at times by her duties, by the glances and stares she receives from the people of her town. If they have ever looked at her as though she's not quite good enough, I would ask her how long she has been queen, and if she wanted this role or if it was handed to her, forced upon her. I want to know the story of her life. On the oval-shaped coffee table sits a pot of tea, gone cold, a delicate daisy-studded teacup. Beside it, the liquid inside half consumed. The scent is faintly of lemon. It feels like such a normal thing to be sitting and drinking tea in a library. Pleasing, normal. She's a woman who could just as easily be a grandmother, who might bake cookies on Saturday mornings and knit scarves for her grandchildren well into the night. Maybe she is all of these things and also a queen. Maybe she can do both. A queen with a crown, her portrait hung on the wall, and a grandmother, and a woman. Maybe I can be both too, a rag doll and a pumpkin queen, in control of her own life, her own royal title, a queen who doesn't allow the sovereignty to overshadow the rag doll she's always been. I place my soft hand against the queen's, only gently, for fear I'm not supposed to, but I want to feel the humanness of her skin, to know that she is real, and that even a queen has blood running through her veins like any other mortal, a queen touching another queen's hand. I swear I can feel the nobility of her through her skin like a golden, shimmery light, the strength of a woman who has seen many things, overcome much in her long life, a woman who was meant for this role. Yet I'm certain that not every princess or duchess or queen has felt like they belonged. Not every crown worn inside the library, this castle, has felt steady or sure on the heads where they sat. Perhaps the crown has sat heavier on some heads than others, threatening to break them or reshape them into something else, something even mightier. I swallow down everything rumbling inside me, the hurt and the fear and the gut-churning doubt, and I wonder if I can be shaped into something stronger too, sturdier, resilient. Even if my seams can be broken, that doesn't mean I will be. I draw my hand away, allowing myself to smile just a little. Thank you, I whisper to this queen, Queen Elizabeth II, of some realm, some city within the human world. I stand up from the couch, looking back at her one last time. If I can save Jack and the others, I will also be saving her. A queen who will never know that she met the Pumpkin Queen while she slept, or was brought back from a dreamless slumber because of me. I cross the library to a set of doors, taking in a deep breath, stirring the leaves in my chest, and step out into a grand hall inside a castle much larger than I was expecting. This woman is not just any queen. She might be the queen. It's raining outside when I finally make my way through the labyrinth halls of the castle and step out into the dreary day. I leave through a tall metal gate, past two ornately dressed guards lying on the ground, one curled up like a child, the other with arms spread wide to the overcast sky, both sound asleep. Ahead of me, a wide walkway is framed by green grass and perfectly spaced trees, and seated as far as I can see are humans, dozing on park benches, on sidewalks, or in the neatly trimmed grass, all of them dropped cold where they stood, sand strewn over everything, filtering down from tree boughs, clinging to the skin of every person I see. The Sandman has already been here, everywhere. And if I can't stop him, they will all stay asleep forever. I bit down on the ache inside me, the fear and gravity of what I must do, and what will happen if I don't. If I fail, the burden rests solely on me. I release the thread at my wrist, stepping past the gate. I have to find a way out of the human world. And I break into a run, sprinting down long thoroughfare, past sleeping bodies until the lawn gives way to buildings built much too close together. I have to find a cemetery or a graveyard. Even a church will do, if someone has been buried there. I turn onto a wide concrete road and keep running. Jack was right when he said the human towns are unlike any in the holiday realms. They are much, much larger. But as I make my way up the streets, searching for anything resembling hallowed land, a place where humans have buried their dead, everything is eerily quiet. Only the sound of birds and the soft rain against the street. I press on, searching down rows of brick homes, stacked side by side, Shops with open signs in their windows, but everyone asleep inside. When I reach a corner or a side street, I turn left and then right. I have no idea where I am, but I know that I couldn't return to Dreamtown now. Even if I wanted to, the doorway back into the Lullaby Library was surely destroyed. Not going back, only forward. I pass a market, a hair salon, a clothing store with an array of oversized handbags and colorful shoes that sparkle. Necklaces in the window display still everywhere. People are sleeping, snoring, clutching paper cups of coffee spilled onto the ground, some sitting in automobiles slumped against steering wheels. The city sits entombed in silence. No car horns or wailing babies or the thrum of human activity. Nothing. At last, the light in the sky begins to dim. The doubt growing larger inside me, I finally spot an old stone archway, a high wall, and through it, I find what I've been looking for. Relief shudders through me, and I gulp down a breath as I sleep. I gulp down a breath as I step through the archway that reads Burton Cemetery, and into an expanse of land dotted with carved stones, a graveyard. It's the largest cemetery I've seen. It's actually the largest cemetery I have ever seen, a place Jack would surely love. A long rectangle of green lawn lined with rows and rows of old, moss-coated and weather-worn gravestones. Rain pounds the earth, and the cold tickle of air against my neck reminds me of the cemetery in Halloween Town, a feeling that exists in every cemetery, it seems. That hint of death, of sorrow, of lives brought to an end. But I don't have to go far before I find a small stone structure with an ornate mausoleum with spirals along the roof line and a copper door tarnished green from the rain. A tomb where the dead are placed to rest. I glanced up the path. The cemetery glistens in the wet air. I have passed through many realms, all the way into the human world, to a city made strangely silent, and now this mausoleum is my way home, my way back to Jack. I feel the leaves stir in my chest, knowing how close I am to finally seeing him again, and I pull open the door into the tomb. The cold inside, like winter air, the dark absolute. I swallow down the anxiety and fear beating against my tired seams, and I step through the mausoleum door into the cold, cold dark, thinking of home. And when I step out the other side, through the dim, lightless burial chamber, I emerge into a familiar cemetery. I am back in Halloween Town. Chapter 17. Halloween Town is quiet, the wrong kind of quiet. The dark corners and shadowed alleys where grim, monstrous things usually lurk have all gone still. Dead leaves thump in my chest, beating in my ears, and I move quickly and quietly through the cemetery. For a moment, I think the Sandman is gone, traveled to one of the other holiday towns, or still making his way through the human world. But as I creep closer through the shadows at the outer edge of town, I hear it, a low humming croon, a whispered lull like water and wood smoke coiling, creeping into my ears. The Sandman is here, searching, searching for me. A chill travels down my seams, landing in my toes. He's looking for me, hunting me, but I have come back in search of him. I can't tell where he is, his voice echoing over rooftops, so I keep to the dark shadows, sprinting from one to another like a spider afraid of daylight. Now that I know the truth, that I was born in Dreamtown, I know his dream sand won't work on me, but I also don't know how deep his cruelty runs. If he discovers me and realizes he's unable to put me to sleep, what other awful cold-blooded things might he do? Maybe he'll rip me apart at the seam, stitch by stitch, until I am only a pile of dead leaves and shredded fabric. Nothing left to put back together, so I stay hidden, carefully tiptoeing through the dark, and I make my way to the garden behind Dr. Finkelstein's lab, where I quickly gather the herbs I'll need: deadly nightshade, black valerian root, foxglove, and a pinch of corpse flower, meant to mimic the effects of the dead. I hope it will be enough. It has to be enough. I sneak down the alley behind Dr. Finkelstein's lab, black shoes making the softest sound against the stone, when I hear the Sandman's humming song, sounding closer than before. A slow, ghastly lullaby vibrating down the darkened streets. Silently, breath held tight in my linen chest, I slink along the perimeters of town, pausing beside the witch sisters, apothecary, listening. A second passes, then another. I clutch the herbs in my hands, trying not to make a sound, but the Sandman has fallen quiet. Perhaps he moved to the far edge of town. Searching the woods, I step into the open, ready to dart the last few yards to the gate and into our home, when a shadow flashes overhead, dark and horrible. Him. I nearly drop the herbs, scrambling back out of sight, back pressed to the stone wall, needles stabbing at my gut, the fear weaving up and down every inch of my threaded seams. But for a moment, the Sandman's shadow slips past the alleyway and moves farther back into town, into the dark. He didn't see me, and this is my chance. I push myself away from the wall and sprint the last several yards at the gate, taking the steps two at a time, scrambling into our house. Inside, I yank the door close and slide the lock into place, gasping, my lungs screaming in my chest, ears ringing, but I made it. I climb the spiral stairs up to our room, clutching the herbs in one hand and the thread along my chest humming, fingers trembling, and when I step into the bedroom, I find Jack right where I left him, asleep in our bed. Tears trail down my face. He's still here, and he's still asleep. I step farther into the room, about to cross to the bed, when a shadow slips out from the closet, a deep growl echoing across the room. Zero drifts into the faint moonlight cast through the window, his teeth bared, a rumble in his chest, ready to protect Jack no matter what. But when he sees it's me, his ears suddenly drop, and he rushes towards me, burying his head against my chest. "I'm okay," I whisper into his fur, folding my arms around him. "I made it back." He makes a whimpering sound, nudging in closer to my neck. "Thank you for staying behind," I say to him, "for watching Jack." Tears fall from my chin. I am unable to hold them back. I felt so alone since leaving Halloween Town, and now, being back in my home, my bedroom, and finding Zero still awake has broken open a part of me. I feel a strange relief, woven together with the nagging prick of fear. Zero drifts back from me, his dog eyes damp at the corners, and I stroke my hands down his fur one last time before I hurry across the room to Jack. I drop the herbs onto the nightstand and climb onto the quilt beside him. My body heaves. My eyes burn with tears, and I rest my head against his chest, listening to the hollow echo. I close my eyes, and for a moment I wish I was asleep, just like him, lying side by side, each trapped in our own dreamless darkness. But Zero moves close, and he nudges his nose against my cheek, eyes blinking. Maybe he knows I can't stay here. I can't curl up with Jack and rest. I have to keep moving. The longer I stay in one spot, the more likely the Sandman will discover me. I run my fingertips along Jack's cheekbone. "I'm going to try," I whisper, even though he can't hear me, and I place my mouth on his, kissing his sleeping lips. "I'll make this right." Using a bit of string from the spool in my pocket, I tie my hair back into a ponytail, out of the way while I work, then hurry back downstairs to the kitchen. I retrieve a cast iron pot from a hook above the sink and light a fire. Working quickly, I grind up the herbs, then place them into the pot, measuring 3 times the usual amount. It's enough to put a woodland giant to sleep for an entire year, but I need it to be strong. I will only get one chance for this to work. I stir the simmering pot until it turns a bright, gruesome red, the same shade as Ruby Valentino's lips. But it's too bright, too obvious. Then I remember. I reach into the pocket of my dress, past the spool thread to the thing I'm looking for. When I pull it out, the leaves are slightly flattened, but it's still intact. The 4-leaf clover given to me by the leprechaun in St. Patrick's Town. He said it would bring me luck, and I need it now. I drop the green leaf clover into the potion, and within seconds, the color turns to a vibrant, grassy green, reminding me of the damp meadow in St. Patrick's Town, freshly dewed with rain, the exact shade I need. Once the brew has boiled down and the scent is so rich and noxious that I felt lightheaded, I pour it into a glass jar, stopping it with a cork. The potion is ready. Now to make decoys. Back in our bedroom, I pull out the old sewing machine from the closet and gather the yards of fabric that the vampire prince and the witch sisters brought over for my absurd, queenly wardrobe. I wanted to get rid of them, get rid of it all. Hated the feel of the gauzy fabric pinned to my skin, but now it'll be useful. I tear off odd strips of fabric and begin sewing them together, pinching my tongue between my teeth while I work, stitching 6 patchworks dresses that look just like my own, 6 pairs of arms and legs, 6 faces and torsos. I work through the night, sweat at my temples, fingertips worked raw. And when the sun finally breaks over the horizon, streaking a soft, dreamy orange through the windows, I stand from the sewing machine to survey my work, Zero hovering beside me, his head tilted curiously to one side. Across the wood table lie 6 lifeless rag dolls, each wearing a patchwork dress. With the sun now setting fat and bright in the sky, there are fewer shadowed places to hide, but I slink through town, tiptoeing quietly along the streets, then pausing at each corner, listening for the Sandman. I can hear him in the distance, never far away, but I need to keep moving. I told Zero to stay at the house with Jack, and now I skirt along the edge of the town square, stopping to position my first doll in the doorway of the Witch Sisters' apothecary, suspended by a string from the door frame so the wind catches it slightly, stirring the doll's arms and legs as though it's alive, a decoy. I hurry to the outer border of town, stringing 3 more beneath the bare branches of the spiny, howling trees, magpies, cawing at me from the limbs, making too much noise. Once secured, I drag the last 2 dolls toward the center of town. There are fewer shadows here to hide beneath the sun glaring down brightly from above, but I manage to hang one of the decoys in the massive spider webs on the east side of the town square, suspended between 2 buildings to fake ragdoll arms clinging to the sticky webs. Briefly, Black Widow scrambles down from her hidden perch, investigating the lifeless dolls. She scurries over it, eyes like domes, then decides there is no such blood to be drawn from the fake doll. She hurries back up to her corner, tucked safely away where she won't be seen. Dragging the 6th and final doll, I cross the town square when I hear the Sandman's lullaby, but it's different this time, slower. A tiptoe over each rhythmed word, and I realize he's located the first hanging doll from one of the howling trees. He thinks he's found me. There is a sudden quiet, a lull of his song, followed by a swift rustling. I can't see him beyond the row of black stone buildings, but I suspect he's blowing sand into the fake rag doll's eyes, hoping she'll fall into a bottomless sleep. Another moment of quiet, no lullaby, no humming, and then the echoing crack of branches, like he's ripped the doll from the tree and tossed it to the ground. His song resumes, followed again by silence. He's found another doll. I need to hurry. I reach the town hall, and placed the last rag doll on the steps, bending her legs at the knees, and folding her arms into her lap, making her appear as though she's quietly enjoying the late morning sunlight, while the mayor snores beside her. The sound of more snapping tree branches echoes through the town, the crack and splintering of wood. He's found the other two dolls. With my leaves trembling in my chest, I hurry back toward the fountain. I'm almost in it when from the corner of my vision I catch sight of the Sandman, cloud-tinted robes, dragging along the street, gray wispy beard along. Then I remember, and a cruel, awful look in his dark-rimmed eyes. He rounds a corner near the witch sister's apothecary. A slow, winding hiss leaves his lips. I drop to the ground, the jar of potions nearly slipping free from the pocket of my dress. If the jar broke and spilled the noxious potion at my feet, the fumes might be enough to knock me into a deathly sleep forever. Carefully, I slide the jar back into my pocket, then scramble beside the low brick wall that encircles the town center. It's hardly a hiding place, but I try to make myself small, coiled into a ball, just a heap of fabric, nothing more. The Sandman spots the fourth decoy in the doorway of the witch sister's shop and quickly blows a handful of sand into its eyes, but the doll just hangs there, moving gently in the morning breeze. I can see the irritation cut along his forehead, and he rips the doll from the doorway, pulling off its studded cotton head and throwing it to the ground. He grips the limp body by one foot and drags it for several yards until he notices the fifth doll suspended from the spider web. He drops the headless doll and darts toward the web, but he doesn't blow sand into its eyes. He stares at it suspiciously, drifting closer to touch one of the rag doll's hands. His mouth seems to lift in a snarl, and he lets the doll's hand fall back into place. He knows it's fake. He sees through the trick, and he rips it free from the spider web, breaking several of the spider's careful strands, then tosses it to the ground. I waited too long. I should have sprinted to the fountain when I first heard him at the howling trees. I should have made more decoys, but it's too late now. The Sandman turns, scanning the town square, moving slowly, like he senses he's being watched. Something isn't quite right. He spots the last fake Sally perched on the step of the town hall, and he begins moving toward it, but not with the urgency he did when he spotted the others. His gaze darts to his left, the right, and I have to sink further into the narrow shadow where I'm hidden, tucking my arms and legs close. If he finds me, if he can't put me to sleep, like the fake dolls, because his dream sand won't work on me, will he rip off my head just like the decoy, popping seams and broken thread, and my head is no longer attached to my body? When he's within a few yards of the last doll, I slink one leg out of the shadow, then the other. I risk stepping into the sunlight. I have to do this quickly, or not at all. My heart is a sledgehammer. My throat dry, the Sandman bends down to examine the fake doll. He pokes it with his white fingertip, suspicious. This is my chance. I sprint across the open space between the low stone wall and the fountain. The sun glares down at me, the air too quiet, my footsteps too loud. Everything moving in awful slow motion. At the fountain, I collapse down against its stone edge, my breathing ragged in my chest, a rasp and a wheeze. Maybe if I'm lucky, I made it without being seen. I peer over the edge of the fountain and see the Sandman still hunched over the last rag doll. I only have seconds or two before he tears it up and comes looking for the real rag doll, me. I remove the cork from the top of the jar, the scent so dreadful that my nose puckers and I turn my face, not wanting to breathe it in. I reach my arm over the edge of the fountain and pour the green potion into the water. It makes a swirling, bubbling sound as it mixes with the already green water, the color blending in perfectly, just as I'd hoped. The air is briefly pungent with the scent before it drifts away in the wind, and I place the cork back into the bottle, taking a deep breath. Now, I just need to lure the Sandman across the town square. I climb atop the edge of the fountain, wave my arms and shout, and then he races towards me. At the last, final moment, I'll have to jump out of the way, and he will plummet into the fountain. Simple as that. Easy. I peek above the stone edge, looking across the town hall. The Sally doll is just as I left her, resting on the steps undisturbed. No thread snapped, no arms torn free, but the Sandman is gone. A creeping, slithering sensation inches its way down my neck, the feeling of being watched. I whip around, sucking in a breath, and there, only a few yards away, hovering just above the ground, is the Sandman. He's right behind me, staring at me. There's no way to go. My head pounds, the breath stuck at the top of my throat. This isn't how it was supposed to go. His eyes are flat and dark, a wad of sand gripped tightly in his fist. He no longer hums his lullaby, no longer tries to lull me with pleasant words. He's been searching for me, has seen through my tricks, and now he's found me. There is a sharp-edged stillness in his gaze, a fury that won't be easily satiated. Simply stealing my dreams might not be enough for him now. He will want me to suffer. He will want to tear me apart and pull out my stuffing by the clump, hearing every thread snap, every seam peel open. I take a step back, my heel hitting the edge of the fountain. He moves closer, slowly, cautiously. He doesn't trust me. And when he's only a foot away, he sneers down at me. Tricky girl, he says, his voice still a sing-song. Thick gray eyebrows drawing up into his forehead. You pretend you are a rag doll. Make believe, fabric and string. He squints at me, like it's hard for him to find the words. Like he's not used to speaking in anything other than riddles and songs. Where have you been hiding? He asks. He doesn't know that I went to his home in Dreamtown, that I ventured through the human world, or that I'm immune to his dream stand. Still, I swallow and lean forward. Still, I swallow and lean away from him. But he's too close now. Muted white robes, brushing the cobblestone, draped across him like wet curtains. And I have no way to force him into the fountain. I had felt so certain that this would work, that I could save everyone, even the human world. But the moment is slipping away, the element of surprise lost. His eyes gleam in awful pale white. His hair sticks up from his head, ashy and wild. His beard long and wispy and tangled. I gulp down a breath, meeting the anger in his eyes, but my heart is beating like bones, shaking loose from my rib cage, and my legs want to collapse beneath me. He lifts his hand towards me, opening the palm, dream sand spilling between his fingers like waterfall. He draws in a long, full breath, cheeks puffing like moons. When he exhales in a sudden gust like a northern wind, I don't flinch back, I don't blink. I let the sand envelop me in a cloud, dusting my nose and cheeks and eyelashes. I breathe it in, unafraid. And for one quick second, I wonder if my parents were wrong. Perhaps the sand will work on me. I spent much of my life outside of Dreamtown, and maybe I'm not immune, as I once might have been. The sand will send me into a fathomless, deep sleep, unawaking for eternity. But as the sand falls to the ground around me, little grains sinking into the stone, cracks, I blink and look up at the Sandman, unaffected, still awake. His expression has gone slack with confusion. I'm not pretending to be anyone, I say to him. I am Sally Skellington, the Pumpkin Queen. There is warmth in my chest now, heat and fury and anger. But I was born in Dreamtown. The words feel like their own conjuring, a spell, a ritual, or bedtime riddle, to cast into the stars and make them true. I feel suddenly awake and alive, a woman who isn't simply a rag doll, but a ruler who has traveled to all the realms, even the human world, to set things right, who feels a spark, a wrath brewing inside her. The Sandman's mouth turns into a deep, bewildered frown, eyes narrowed on me, as if he's unsure whether this is another trick, if I might be just another fake doll, like the others, but this is no ruse. I am the queen of this realm, and I won't let this monster take away everything I love. Behind the Sandman, a shadow slips through the air, quick and quiet, and I stiffen my shoulders back, knowing I'm the one queen you won't be able to put to sleep. I say to him, my mouth gone flat, thinking of the human queen I met in the library. I suck in another breath, bracing myself. The shadow moves closer, racing toward the Sandman. 0. I told him to stay with Jack, but he came anyway. Maybe he sensed something wasn't right, that I was in danger. Maybe he's been following me all this time. I clench my teeth. eyes trained on the Sandman. I'm the queen who's going to stop you. Zero closes the gap. 10 feet. 8, 3, 1. I pinched my eyes closed and launched myself out of the way, tumbling across the cobblestone, feeling several threads pop at the impact, breaking apart. My leaves rise up into my nose, but I jerk my head around just in time to see the Sandman, his eyes gone as wide as pond stones. Right before Zero barrels into his back, and the Sandman tumbles forward off balance and pitches head first into the fountain. Water erupts over the side of the fountain, like when the corpse kid does one of his lopsided cannonballs, and in an instant, the Sandman disappears into the deep, deep water. I hold in a breath, watching, waiting. Zero races to my side, whimpering, nosing me in the cheek. I'm okay, I nodded. Thank you. He saved me. I lay a hand against his neck, feeling his ghostly warmth beneath my palm, and I'm about to let out a long, relieved exhale when water suddenly rises over the edge of the fountain like a great swelling wave, crashing and dispersing. Sandman appears, hair and beard soaking wet, white robes now stained green, and still awake. The potion didn't work. It wasn't strong enough. Maybe if I had let it steep longer, if I had added more deadly nightshade. The Sandman claws toward the edge of the fountain, his eyes on me, mumbling something, a lullaby, a string of words that are unintelligible. I gulp and scramble back, trying to push myself up, but my feet keep slipping under me. Panic screams from my chest. I need to run, but where will I go? Into the woods? To hide? For how long? Forever? I manage to get to my feet, to follow Zero, who's already flitting away, about to flee past the gate and into the woods. The Sandman's eyes flutter briefly. He mutters something else, words I can't make out. Run, run, my mind yells, but something keeps me rooted to the ground. A curiosity, a feeling, and I watch as the Sandman's eyes shutter closed again and then open, closed, open, close. He makes it to the edge of the fountain, arms slung over the side, trying to pull himself free, but it's no use. The potion was strong enough after all. Carefully, I take a step closer to him, a smile inching up at the corners of my mouth. He tries to speak one final time, but no sound comes out, only a muttering exhale, and after one last slow blink, he collapses against the stone edge of the fountain. The Sandman is fully, impossibly dead asleep. And that will end chapter 17. Tune in next time for chapter 18. And let's see if it worked. Let's see if, because the Sandman is asleep, if everyone else will wake up. Hit that like, that subscribe button if you haven't already. And this is Ruby signing off. Goodbye.